How do people get into debt? It's really easy to do, is it not? I want to talk to you a little while about finances, including about debt and what a bondage it is to be in debt. And debt-free, friends, is the way to be. My wife and I, Renee and I, we became debt-free at age 43. We had made a goal to be debt-free at age 40. But we didn't quite make it. But I mean, at age 43, we had all consumer debt, cars, including the house. I remember making that final payment on the house. My wife and I went down to the bank to make the final payment. You have to do that in person. And we went down to make the final payment. And the gentleman there said, well, I need you to come back in 2 hours. Why do we need to come back in 2 hours? We want to make our final payment now. He said, no, you've got to come back in 2 hours because I've never seen anybody pay their house off. He said, I've got to learn what to do. So we went out and came back 2 hours later and made our final payment. And it felt great to be absolutely 100% debt-free. And so I hope you'll make that your goal too, to be debt-free. You know, the Bible is the greatest financial book there is. I've got a copy of it right here. The greatest book about finances is the Bible. And I want to give you a little bit of Bible along the way and principles that are found in the Bible that will help you as far as your finances and as far as debt. And so I've got an outline here, and it's actually a 12-point outline. I'm going to do part of it in this first video, and then we'll do one more video with the final points. But let me give you a little Bible first. Romans 13 and verse 8, it says, owe no man anything, but love one another. And then Proverbs 22:7, the borrower is servant to the lender. And then Psalm 37 and verse 21, the wicked borroweth and payeth not again. You know, the average person in America and the average family in America is guilty of seriously violating one of the following things. Number one, living beyond its means. That's not good. It's not good. It gets you into debt to live beyond your means. Number two, average family is guilty of this, knowing very little about money management. Number three, spending more than you make. That's not good either. None of these are very good. Number four, fail to give and tithe and give offerings off of your income. I'm a Christian, and so I really do believe that we ought to give tithes and offerings to the Lord. God blesses that, and we'll talk about that at some point. Number five, how do people get into debt? Number five, wasting money on things that are not needed. And then number six, feeling pressure to maintain a standard of living that's equal to others. You know, just live within the means of what God has for you. See, every man needs to learn three things. Number one, you need to learn how to earn money, learn how to save money, and learn how to give money. And live within the means that you have. And then Christians are in debt when you're in the following circumstances. If your liabilities exceed your assets, you are in debt. You know, if you owe $50,000 on your house, but you got $150,000 in the bank, well, you're not upside down. You have assets that are greater than your liability. But if you've got a mortgage of $150,000 and all that you have to your name is $50,000, then you're upside down, and you are in debt. You're in debt when your bills are past due. Boy, that just doesn't feel good, does it? When the bills are past due, you know you're being dishonest. When intentionally you have not paid your bills on time. If by human error you fail to get a bill in, that's one thing. But if you are intentionally not paying your bills on time, that's dishonest. And I encourage you not to do that. And then you're in trouble with this When your bills prevent you from acquiring something that your family really needs, you're in trouble. You really need to always have some funds that you've saved for things that your family needs. You know your family's going to need medical attention. They're going to need to go to the dentist. You're going to need a car. Cars don't last forever. Hot water heaters do not last forever. You have to replace those. The second law of thermodynamics, everything's falling apart. Your house is falling apart. Your car is falling apart. And you've got to save to do repairs and so forth. And if you've spent everything that you've made and you've not saved for these acquisitions that you know that you're going to have to acquire, you're not managing your funds very well. And then when financial pressure, when it creates family disharmony, that's a bad thing, isn't it? I'm telling you a lot of bad things. I'm going to tell you some good things later. But here's some tragic news about finances. A lot of families, they're having fights and squabbles and a lot of pressure because they've not managed their money properly. And then you're in debt if you've not tithed. Now that's the way I look at it. If you've not tithed, you are in debt to God. Well, so let's talk about the first one on this list. Past due bills. I've got a list of 12. Here's the number one on this little outline. Past due bills. You know, when you borrow beyond your family's ability to pay back, that is dangerous. It's really dangerous to borrow beyond your ability to pay back. And I've become aware of some folk that have done that. I heard a man say this. He said, well, I got me another vehicle. This was a third vehicle for their family. He said, I got this vehicle. I've went in debt on it. He said, I have no idea how I'm going to pay for it. He actually said that. Friends, that's foolish. You need to have a plan on how you're going to pay for things that you have acquired. And getting behind on your bills, past due bills, that is very bad. When you spend beyond your family's financial ability to pay back, I believe that's immoral. It's a strong word, isn't it? Immoral. Making a debt that you know you will not pay, immoral. It's just like the national debt for America. You know, we'll talk about that maybe at some point. But these trillions of dollars, do you know how much money $1 trillion is? It's not good for our country. It's not good for a state. It's not good for a city. And it's not good for a family to have past due bills and making debts that you just cannot pay back. That's not good. I've heard that 70% of Christian families are experiencing financial difficulties, a lot of it because they've made bills that they had no idea how they would pay them back. Before you make the bill, you ought to have a plan on how you're going to pay that. And being in debt, it affects your Christian witness, your Christian testimony. And so, number one on our things we're discussing is past due bills. Number two, having no financial goals. That's a bad thing. I'm telling you a lot of bad things up first in this video. No financial goals. You know, goals provide direction. They give you a reference point. And a family ought to be making plans on some priorities of acquisitions, of things that are needed for the family. If there's braces that are going to be needed for one of the children, you need to provide for that. You need to be thinking about that. You need to be saving for that. If college education, whatever the bills are, clothing, food, the appliances at the house, you know, refrigerators have to be replaced. And so you've got to have some financial goals that you've established. And I encourage you to write them down. I was talking with someone this very day about their finances. And I said, I think what you need to do is to make a list of all of your debts and then make a list of all of your assets and just see where you stand. This person, they didn't really know where they stood on their finances. And we've got a lot of people like that. So write down your goals on paper. And then on a routine basis, go back and check those goals. How are you doing? And of course, make sure these goals are noble things, right things, prudent things, and establish your priorities. Obligate money to things that really need to be obligated to. People who appear rich, they're often the people who just really made plans. They earned money, they saved money, they made priorities. And so I encourage you, write things down, make some plans, establish some short-range goals. First thing on your establishing some short-range goals, I would tell you this: acknowledge that God is the owner of everything. My wife and I paid that house off. Oh, so Brother Fox, that's now your house. Well, not really. It's God's house. Renee and I are just stewards of it for a little while. Life is very short. And for a little while, we're no longer, as the world says, in debt to a financial institution for the house. And so acknowledge that God owns everything. He owns you. He owns the house. He owns the car. He owns the furniture. He owns the appliances. God owns it all. And I'm glad he does. I'm glad he's the one in charge. I'm glad I'm not in charge. But I am his servant, and I'm trying to follow his Bible as far as finances. And so acknowledge that God's the owner of everything, and then tithe on your gross income. Whatever your gross income is, tithe on it. And then live within your income. I've said that before, but I want to say it again. Live within your income. In fact, you should live within about 75% of your income. You ought to give 10 to 15%, 10% for sure to God right off the top. But then I encourage you to give offerings above that. And then I encourage you to save at least 10% for retirement. We'll talk about retirement at some point. Retirement is a modern invention. How many times in the Bible does the word retire appear? Well, 0. It never appears in the Bible. The Levites had a time where they changed jobs at age 50. They had something of a retirement from age 50 on. They did other things that they hadn't been doing before, and they quit doing things they had done up until age 50. But the word retirement does not appear in the Bible, or the concept. But obviously, as you get older, your strength diminishes physically, and you can't work as hard as you did. And so you have to make some provisions to plan ahead with your finances for your later years of your life. So live within your income, tithe your gross income, eliminate credit, pay off all the bills. Work at paying off all the bills. And then save, like I said, and save for things that you want and save for things that you need. About a vacation, save for it. A washer and dryer, save for it. A car, save for it. Save for these things. And then establish some long-range goals. Develop an investment program. At some point, I want to talk with you about IRAs. IRA, Individual Retirement Agreement. It's an agreement with the government, and it has some nice tax ramifications, either tax deferred. So we'll talk about that, the IRA. I want you to be working and thinking ahead about your investment programs that you need to establish. And then, save for the things that you need. Pay your house off. Oh, I want you to pay your house off. It feels great. It feels great to have your house paid off. Now, let's talk about big subject number 3, borrowing for wants. Should you do that? Should you borrow for things you want? I want to tell you something. Impulse buying can create a lot of problems. Impulse buying. You know, if you have an impulse to buy a pack of gum, well, that's not going to be nearly the problem that a impulse buy of a car. You know, an impulse buy of a bunch of bananas, that probably won't destroy you. But an impulse buy of a car, you may regret that. You may regret that within just a few days after you've bought that car. And so don't live just by impulses. Live by planning. Failing to plan is planning to fail, is an old adage, and it's really true. And the Bible teaches planning. So here's some questions. Here's some questions to ask yourself about buying for wants. Question number 1, do I really need it? Do I really need this item? That's a good question to ask yourself. Here's a second question to ask yourself. Do I have the cash money? Have I saved the money up? Have I escrowed the money? Can I pay this off in cash? Question 3. The item I'm having this thought about buying, is it appreciating in value or is it depreciating in value? You know, cars depreciate in value pretty rapidly. Homes, on the other hand, over the long term, they appreciate in value. Airplanes, believe it or not, airplanes appreciate in value. There's planes from the 50s and 60s that are still being flown and have actually increased in value through the years. So these items that you're thinking about buying, are they appreciating or depreciating in value? You need to ask yourself that. And then ask yourself this question. Am I getting this at a bargain? You know, you can search the web for coupon codes and for deals and look for bargains. Plan ahead and think. And know how to make a decision on when you see something that you have been saving for and you see a good price on it, buy it. And then here's a question. Will this item that I'm thinking about buying, will it meet a need for my family? Is it something that my family actually needs? If it is, then you need to consider buying it. And then when you're buying something, here's a great question. Does the retailer that I'm buying from, do they have a good reputation? Through the years, I've had a couple of bad experiences with people that did not stand behind their work or did not stand behind their product. Maybe one of these days I'll tell you those stories. But by and large, by the grace of God, I've been able to buy from reputable people, and the Lord's helped us with that. And I want you to ask yourself that. The person I'm going to buy this from, the business I'm going to buy this from, the retailer I'm going to buy this from, do they have a good reputation? Do they stand behind their product? Question number 7. Does the retailer guarantee their service? And do they guarantee their products? Number 8. Can I substitute another item? You know, can I buy something cheaper that will help my family, that is a substitute? You know, sometimes you can do that and save a significant amount of money. And then question number 9 about borrowing for your wants. Question number 9. Will this item that I'm contemplating to buy, will it honor the Lord? Will it honor the Lord? If it won't honor the Lord, then you shouldn't buy it to begin with. If it's contrary to the things that God would have you have, then don't get it. You know, you can buy things that no decent person ought to have. And so be careful with that. Now, wrong motives can encourage you going into debt. Let me read you a verse from the Bible. Luke chapter 12 and verse 15. And he said unto them, Take heed and beware of covetousness. For a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things which he possesses. You know, trying to impress people with how much you own and how much you have, that's not a good thing. Well, let's do one more, and then I'll have a second video that I'll try to complete this set of set of notes with you. Big number 4. How do you get in debt? Number 4, laziness. Laziness. Some people, they want something for nothing. They're always thinking somebody else ought to do it for them. The Bible teaches to work. Americans in the past, we've just known that a work ethic was a good thing. And I appreciate workers that work. As I travel as an evangelist, I see these maids working in hotels, and I try to compliment them and thank them. As I do drive-thrus at fast food, I want to thank them, and I want to be patient with them. As people work on my car, I want to thank them for that. The postman, as he comes and delivers the mail, I want to be good to my postman. I've said thank you to him a number of times, smiled at him. We need to be thankful, and we ought to appreciate a real work ethic. If the dad and the husband inside of your home, if he gets out of bed and he goes to work and earns for the family and provides for the family, he's a man of honor. And I encourage all the family members to thank the dad who provides for the family. That's a good thing, and that's a noble thing. Laziness is a bad thing. The idea that you should start out with everything. Some young people believe you ought to start out with the very best, the big house and the big car and the fine things of life. It really is not the best way. And there have been some young people who've gotten into an enormous amount of debt because they've tried to acquire these things too quickly. And it's related to laziness to think that you start out at the top. No. Jesus said that those who would be faithful in much, those are the people who have been faithful in the least. When you've been faithful with the little things, later on in life, you'll get to be faithful with bigger things. So don't be lazy. No, work and train your children to work. Do you give your children allowance? I don't guess that's all bad, but I don't think that kids ought to automatically think that that mom and dad just owe me an allowance every week. But mom and dad, they're free to give to their children anytime they want to. But an automatic allowance is demanded by children. I don't think that's a good thing. But chores. Chores for children to do that actually earn a little bit of money. That's a great thing. That's wonderful. You're teaching your children to work. Some of their work just needs to be done because everybody has to help keep the house and take out the trash and do the dishes and keep the house clean and keep the yard clean. Everybody needs to work at that. But some chores each week that the children could earn a little money, that's a good thing. We want to raise the children to have a work ethic. And we don't want our children to be lazy. Now, we want our employers to be very pleased with us. To be slothful and to be lazy at work, that's a bad thing. That's not honoring to the Lord. And I'll tell you something, employers are really, really looking for people who will work. And if you'll work earnestly and if you'll work smart, God will bless you for that. Well, I've got several more that I'm going to give you in the next video, but I want to say thank you. By the way, did you subscribe? I didn't even ask you to do that at the very beginning. Subscribe, would you please? That will help. And I'm going to try to continue teaching some. May God bless you.